How about the Blazers and whatever grave they're digging for themselves right now? Because
Hey,
we thought
break them up.
we thought that this was going to be a really a tankathon season. We were talking about capture the flag from the back end of last season being a deal, and they were kind of plucky early. They started out like 4-6 or something, and people were like, "What are they doing?" And then they got bad for a while. Well, now they've won 5 of 6, and they just kind of whooped up on an Eastern Conference powerhouse in Milwaukee, and listen, if you want to see growth from certain players and you want to see the team win, then this is all wonderful for you. But it still feels like we're careening towards this permanent purgatory of we're good enough to compete, but we're not bad enough to get any better.
Like the tankathon thing. It is weird now because you're closer to the play-in than you are the worst record in the league.
Yeah.
But I mean, Danny talks about this all the time. Like the way they've weighted it now, the top 4 spots all they have the same odds, right?
Right.
And so it really doesn't behoove you to be the Washington Wizards. Like that doesn't matter.
But you need to be in that mix down there.
And then from 5 and 6, you have just a slightly less chance. So the top 6 are really right there. I think it's a 4% chance difference, if I'm not mistaken. So I think the top 4 have the same percentage, and then 5 and 6, I think it's a 4-point drop. And then there's a huge drop off after that. 7, 8, 9, it gets exponentially worse. So you need to be in the top 6, right? So the question becomes, because right now you're right there, right around that top 6.
Yeah, so to the numbers that you're speaking of, teams 1, 2, and 3 all have a 14%
Okay,
chance.
1, 2, and 3. So
and
it's not...
4 has 12.5%. So it's like they're all right there. And then even 5 has a 10.5%. Then 6 gets 9, 7 gets 7.5. You get to 8, you're at 6%.
Yeah, so
4.5, 3, and so on.
So really, you want top 5. Top 6 is not that much different. Than after that, it's a wing and a prayer, right?
Right.
So you're not catching Utah. You're not going to be New Orleans. You're certainly not going to be the Wizards. You're probably not going to be Charlotte. So it's you, it's Brooklyn, it's Toronto, it's Philly.
And right now you are 4 games behind Toronto, and in the win column behind Toronto and Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And you're 6 games behind Charlotte and New Orleans.
Let's also realize too that over the last 3 years, no one has tanked harder after the All-Star break than the Blazers.
Yeah.
I think they have like 13 combined wins after the All-Star break in the last 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Like they pull the cord like no other.
Yeah.
So I understand the idea that this is a little like, oh God, what are we doing here? Right? We're 5 of 6 and we're not playing. Well, we are playing the young guys, but not starting. Scoot went to the bench. Shaden went to the bench. During the stretch runs, like to close these games out, you're not seeing them on the floor. You're going with more of the veterans.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely understand why people are upset about this. I wish I could tell you that I had a better idea of exactly what they're doing. I think we'll have a better idea after the All-Star break. We'll see what sort of moves are made. We'll see who starts long-term sitting out. Like Jeremy Grant got hurt last night. If he's around, do you end up sitting him? Do you start seeing, more of Donovan Clingan? Do you see less of Ayton? Do you see less of Time Lord? Do you see, maybe Scoot or Shaden going back into the starting lineup? Because it does feel right now that you're in kind of a weird purgatory where you don't have a team good enough to win. You don't have a team good enough to be remotely competitive against the best teams in the NBA on a night-to-night basis. I think the Milwaukee one, dude, that's their Super Bowl. Dame's back in town. You could tell.
Yeah.
Like, that's one that they get up for. It's their only national televised game all year.
Mm-hmm.
Second night of a back-to-back for Milwaukee after being in Utah. That's just one of those that, and look, Portland shot the ball really well. And Ayton gave a damn, right? I was reading on Blazers Edge that after Ayton got his ass whipped in the NBA Finals against Giannis and company, that's a game that he gets up for. And we all know when Ayton's engaged.
When he cares, he can be really good.
He's really good. And when he doesn't, well, which most of the time he doesn't. So it's a weird situation. I'm reserving judgment till after the All-Star break and we see if the cord really gets pulled. But if I'm a Blazer fan and you end up as the 8th, kind of the 8th worst record in the NBA, that is going to be very problematic.
Yeah, then you only have a 6% chance at getting the top pick.
Well, and not only do you have a 6% chance of getting the top pick, but chances are you're just going to end up picking 7th or 8th.
Right.
Like, what are we doing? That's my thing. If you're top 5, maybe even top 6, you're not catching the Wizards. And by the way, I don't think people in this city have a stomach for catching the Washington Wizards. I don't think like you are not prepared to win 6 games all year. Look at the apathy and as crappy as we view this team now. And it's really not that bad. At times, it looks okay. And you've seen the development. I think you have a piece in Kamara, who's become something, right?
Yeah.
Avdia
looks like he's going to be a future cornerstone.
Yes. So I think you have those two guys. You know, the Shadens and the Scoots,
I'm going to that
even
link.
Klingon. I think that's kind of one of those, like, I wish we had a little more defined role of where those are going. I just don't want this to be a complete lost season. And I feel like if you end up 7th or 8th, I feel like this is just, you're just kicking the can down the road and you're getting marginally better with a marginal player sitting there at the 7th or 8th spot. So I am not mashing the panic button yet, but I will say that my hand is starting to move towards it just a bit.
Yeah, and the thing that I continue to struggle with is Chauncey's still in his first head coaching job, and he's a guy that for his own future and for his own benefit,
he needs to win.
Wants to and needs to win.
Yes.
So he's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. And if you didn't want him to go down this path this year where they're kind of competitive, then you should have canned him before the season started and given someone else the job to say, hey, this is the year to lose.
This is the weirdest thing, is because at the end of the day, you go back a couple years, you brought in a coach that was brought in to win and build around Dame. He did not sign up for this. I think you tried to get him to quit last year.
Yep.
And he didn't. And you didn't let him go look at other jobs, and you won't fire him. You canned his brother. You said that you were going to go all in. Well, you didn't go all in. And now, all right, we're going with a youth movement. But at the same time, and I get that maybe it's not a good idea to just throw every young guy to the wolves, right? The idea of if you throw Scoot and you throw Sharp and you throw Klingon out there and they're not ready, right? Do you do more harm than good? Think about like with a rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, because let's be honest, for a while, Scoot was absolute dog-ass.
Right. And putting him in the starting role and continuing to throw himself out there and letting him be that bad over and over again can be detrimental if you let it go on too long.
And Klingon, for the most part, hasn't not proven that he can even play 20 minutes a night.
Right.
Right? He just doesn't have...
He's got flashes.
He's got flashes. And then Sharp is... You're trying to, I think he's the one guy that you're trying to really round into form and trying to get him to be a complete player. And if he's not willing to do that, maybe you do have some tough lessons that he needs to learn. So I'm not one of these guys that say, hey, you need to play these guys 38 minutes a night. But I hope to God, and I'm not in those meetings and I'm not super attached to the Blazers, I would hope that there's some sort of plan.
Yep.
I would hope that there is a plan from Chauncey to management to Cronin to Jody to the players.
I have concepts of a plan.
Yeah, I hope that there's some sort of plan moving forward and we don't have multiple, for the last handful of years, it feels like we have multiple timelines, right? And we have multiple people with different ideas of where this is going to go. And that's the only part that scares me, is it feels a little disjointed right now that there isn't one path forward.
Yeah.
And while it's fun to see the Blazers have last night, if you're a Blazer fan, it's awesome.
If you just want to see this team win and you're like, whatever, they're going to have to figure it out some way. Like, I want them to entertain me and see them win. You're having a great ride right now.
Yes, but I just don't, I said, that to me is a waste. Winning 24 games this year and ended up with the 8th worst record. What did we just do? Because let's be honest, outside of Denny, who I think you can say that, and Tumani, right? I think you have two guys. And by the way, neither one of them is a star. But I think both of those guys,
solid pieces,
in some way look like that is, you plug them into what you're doing, right? You got a 3-and-D guy, and it seemed to be who's just a badass on defense, and he's a role player though. That guy is not a needle mover. He's a role player. He needs to be your 4th best player, but he's there. You got him.
Right.
And you've got another guy that appears to be a solid starter, right? Solid starter, and maybe becomes a little better than that.
Yeah, still really young.
Still really young, right? Maybe he becomes one of those I don't know, like a better version of like a Rudy Gay or Tayshaun Prince,
sure.
like Iggy for Golden State,
right? Like a long 3-and-D capable scorer, yeah.
But you don't have, and this is my whole problem, you don't have one guy, not a single one, that you look at and said that is a foundational piece. And maybe Ant turns into one. I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe Klingon turns into one. Way too early to tell. Maybe Sharp. Maybe that's your best bet to turn into one. And Scoot, which appears to be a galaxy away. And that's my biggest problem. And it's been my biggest problem. Good players don't win in the NBA. They don't. it doesn't work. You need guys. And right now there isn't a single one on your roster that you can say definitively or even more than likely turns into the guy or even the second guy. Maybe you've got the third wheel on this thing. I think you have the fourth wheel. Maybe you have the fourth and fifth wheel. Maybe you have the third, but you certainly don't have one that's one and you don't have one that's two. And it scares the living daylights out of me that because you're relying right now on the third, fourth, and fifth wheel, that you're going to end up with the 8th damn best record or the 8th worst record.
And maybe get another third, fourth, or fifth wheel.
And get another third and fourth wheel. And that's just not good enough. You need someone that's a 1 or a 2. And it appears that this draft is where to find them.
Yep.
So my hope is enjoy this. You've won 5 or 6. Great. Come trade deadline. Don't win. And I think Danny always says 22 wins, right? That's the bet. Do not win more than 22 games.
Well, you're at 14, aren't you?
I think you're at 18.
18 already. 18. That's right.
So
you're chasing 2 teams.
Enjoy this while it lasts. And that was a fun night. But my God, after the deadline, start pulling the cord.
Yeah.
Stop playing the veterans at the end of games. Start getting some guys with some lower body injuries. Get some bad backs. Stop. Because if you end up with the 8th pick, all you did was absolutely waste this season. And let's be honest, I'm tired of wasted seasons because I think we've had about 4 of them in a row.
I think a lot of Blazers fans feel that way.